Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to a very special edition of the MrWarrenHayes Show, where today we are going to be reviewing, recapping, doing a little bit of both of the September 7 edition of AEW Dynamite, which I usually do on the main podcast that I record on Thursday nights. But look, you and I, we all know just how much news and events that had to be covered and that I covered with great detail and passion and so on and so forth. I just, look, I ran out of time. I ran out of time to talk about Dynamite properly because I think that this week's Dynamite is an important show. And it didn't feel right to rush through it just to sort of not extend the podcast into the 3 to 4 hour range necessarily. I wanted to do this good and properly. So here we are, a little extra content for everyone who follows who follows me on YouTube and who is subscribed to the MrWarrenHayes podcast. And here we go. We're already starting. It's going to be a long one, isn't it? But this is what I'm doing. This is what we're doing right now. We're going to get right into it because, like I said, first of all, even before I get into it, look, very quick bit of housekeeping. Leave a like on this video. It always seems silly, and there's a reason why, everyone always asks when you're on YouTube, leave a like, because the algorithm likes it. So leave a like, subscribe if you're popping in for the first time. I'd love to have you around. That way you'll make sure you don't miss a thing. All that stuff would be great, and leave some comments below. What did you think about Dynamite? What do you think about the whole CM Punk Elite stuff, the scrum? Let's drop some comments. Let's chat about it. Otherwise, if you're listening to this on your favorite podcast app, well, reviews and all of that, that sounds great. Apple reviews, 5-star reviews, 5-star ratings on Spotify, that stuff would be just fantastic. But like I said, we're not going to get really deep into all of this. I want to get in, as soon as possible, and I think this is where we are right now. I'm going to get immediately right into the crux of the matter, the heart of the matter, AEW Dynamite. Because like I said, I think this was a very important episode of Dynamite for multiple reasons. And I think whatever happens, because at the time that I'm recording this, which is on Friday the 9th, Friday evening, there still hasn't been any word out of AEW, Tony Khan or whatnot, to address anything in an official capacity as to what happened backstage, or what the consequences of those are going to be. There have been reports, and it's been highly substantiated, right, that the Elite, the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, CM Punk have been suspended alongside Christopher Daniels, Pat Buck, Brandon Cutler. And I feel like I'm forgetting someone, but I think that's pretty much it, right? Ace Steel. kind of weird that I'd forget Ace Steel. He's one of the protagonists of this story. So it's interesting to look at all of this right now in this fashion, because we don't know what Tony Khan has decided yet. We don't know what he's going to do moving forward. Outside that, we know that's been reported that people have been suspended. There has been no official word. It wasn't addressed on Dynamite. And I know a lot of people were really annoyed by that. When Tony did his pre-tape, when they broadcast Tony's pre-tape is what actually happened. And where he basically said, I have to vacate the AEW World Championship and the Trios titles without necessarily explaining anything, without even mentioning the name CM Punk or the Elite or Kenny Omega or the Jacksons by name. He just went right into it and said, look, tonight we're having Death Triangle versus Best Friends for the Trios titles, and we're going to have a Grand Slam Tournament of Champions. Let's have, and ended up with a rah-rah speech. Let's have some fun, guys, or whatever, something to that effect. And, it unnerved a lot of people. Because a lot of people, I guess, were expecting this to be addressed on television, right? And I'm not trying to make any excuses here. I'm certainly not going to sit here and try to defend Tony Khan or any decisions. But, the question that comes to mind here is, how would you have gone about doing this on television, like at the start of your show? Let's keep one thing in mind, like outside the shenanigans that have occurred, AEW still had to put on a television show, still had to do something for its new bosses, make sure that everyone was happy, make sure that the show was entertaining, so on and so forth. And for the live crowd as well. There's one thing that I can never really fault AEW at, as opposed to the other guys, is that they do what Dynamite is a show, it's a live show that's broadcast on television. There's the AEW production always 95% of the time considers the live audience as integral, right? As just as important to entertain as the people watching at home. So imagine Tony Khan sitting down in front of his teleprompter. Let's be real here, he was reading, which is fine, don't get me wrong. Sitting down in front of his teleprompter, reading off the statement, and saying, see, I had to, and we're speculating here, right? I'm not saying this is what happened. I had to fire CM Punk, and the Elite and Kenny Omega are suspended for 6 weeks or whatever. That doesn't necessarily start your show off on the best ground. You don't hit the ground running. It would deflate anyone watching the show. It would deflate the live audience, where their top guy, CM Punk, holy shit, really? Like CM Punk. And we're firing him. You're like, wow. This is something I was not expecting. It's a gut punch, and it's not necessarily the best reaction you want. And then from that point on, the show inevitably struggles against that feeling. It has to build back. It has to build back despite that counter momentum that it created for itself. It still has to bring out people. It still has to get you excited for a trios match and so on and so forth. I don't know if addressing it on TV was the best solution, regardless. And then you know exactly what happens then on social media, right? Everyone then hits Twitter, and all they do, the only thing they do, is talk about CM Punk was fired. In the meantime, you're having Adam Page and Bryan Danielson having another classic, and you're having Daniel Garcia winning the Pure title in his hometown, and no one's talking about it because everyone's on fucking social media talking about CM Punk getting fired. You know how this would have went. Detriment to the show. I don't know if I would have done that. I don't know if I would not have done what Tony did. For real though. I feel like whatever happened backstage should be addressed. It needs to be addressed. But there are media channels that exist for that. A press release, so on and so forth. Let's go. Let's do it that way. It's all behind the scenes stuff. Nothing that happens behind the scenes should impact what we see on TV, although we know how wibbly wobbly that can be. When we're at this point here, I just want to take you back to a couple of months ago when Sasha Banks and Naomi walked out of WWE. How was their reaction? Vince telling Michael Cole in his ear to bury Sasha and Naomi. What happened afterwards? What happened? Everyone just was ready to throw hands. kill the momentum of the show. Plus, it looked petty. Didn't come across as good. Now, I'm not saying Tony Khan is going to come out and say Kenny Omega and the Bucks really disappointed the AEW Galaxy. It's not that kind of bullshit. That's not what I mean. What I'm saying is I don't know if addressing it on TV is the way to go about it. Comparatively, people say, especially Rosenberg on his radio show saying, well, you know how Vince would have handled it. He wouldn't have said a goddamn thing. Or if he felt it was big enough news like he did with Brett or with Stone Cold, he would have come out and buried him. What are you talking about? People say, oh, Vince would have handled, how Vince would have handled this, so much better. No, he would not have. In fact, we have 40 years of Vince McMahon behavior, patterns to base ourselves off. Vince would have done one of two things: be completely silent about it, not say a goddamn thing, or be absolutely petty about it. He did it with Sasha and Naomi. He did it with Stone Cold. He did it with Brett. I don't know why anyone thinks that Vince would have acted differently. I really don't. Grade A, pettiness. Come on now. Let's not be, let's not be stupid. And I know that a lot of people are getting nervous. They're getting antsy at the idea of this taking so long. Why hasn't AEW put out a statement? Why haven't they said this? First and foremost, AEW is a private company, and this is something that we have to keep in mind, okay? As opposed to when you have stockholders and you're a publicly traded company where you have outside investors, the general public essentially, that you have to answer to. AEW does not have that obligation. So we have to scooch this under the rug immediately and never think about it again. AEW does not owe us an explanation. Now, should they give us an explanation? Yes, because it is good business to be transparent with your audience. But anyone sitting around going, they owe us an explanation, AEW does not owe you an explanation. They should give you an explanation as a fan, as someone who watches on Wednesdays, as someone who buys a ticket, a pay-per-view. Absolutely, if they respect their fan base and they want to continue to grow it and treat their fan base properly, intelligently, absolutely. This is what they have to do. But they're not obliged to do it. And this is critical at this point. There's no legislation, nothing you can fall back on to force you to give us the minute details. And the update could be as simple as AEW has come to terms with the release of Ace Steel. And that's it. And that could be the extent of it. And you could have a ton of questions still open, but they will have fulfilled a certain end of the bargain here, where the fan base is expecting something. Here, we'll give you something, but this is all you're getting. If they go full transparency, they give us all the details, rejoice. Because, and I think they should. I think regardless, AEW should do it. They should go full transparency, because if indeed, as Jon Moxley said in his excellent promo from Wednesday that we are going to talk about, if AEW is a promotion that is meant to have, eyes, have its vision turn towards the future, and that we're leaving the old ways of doing business behind, well, then the opacity between the company and the audience needs to disappear. The kayfabe doesn't exist anymore. It exists in principle when it's time for wrestlers to shut up about each other and for promotions to not talk about what's going on in the business. Like, there's still a wall that exists there. But if we want to start getting rid of it, if we want to start building trust with wrestling promotions, which would be a novel thing, just because we're not back in the 80s, just because there was a way to do things in the 80s or even the 90s doesn't mean that it still has to apply today. And those can be signs of true change. So again, I don't know what more could have been done on Wednesday on this front. And the fact that people are nervous that there hasn't been a statement yet, that nothing has happened yet, I'm okay with this. Because eventually we should get something. Now, if we're a month removed and they haven't said a thing, then it's going to start getting weird. But I much prefer, here's the thing. What is a suitable turnaround time? An hour after it happened, like an hour after the scrum, TK jumps on Twitter and says, hey, you know what? We're sorry this happened. We apologize. We're looking into it. What is the reasonable amount of time behind this? And with the parties that are involved here, CM Punk, one of the great names of pro wrestling, a legitimate money ratings draw for AEW, their top star. The Elite, not only top stars in the company, but executive vice presidents, getting into skirmish. The parties, everything that's involved here can be very, very complicated and could become very litigious for AEW if not treated properly. And quite frankly, we don't know all the ins and outs of all the contract situations. And, we've posited this before. A few of us have, and it's been going around without any real certainty. But we don't know, for instance, CM Punk coming back is a big deal. How intrinsic was he in getting getting a better deal, a better TV deal for AEW? He could be tied to that. I'm purely speculating. I'm not saying that this is it, but I'm just purely speculating. You bring in CM Punk, then suddenly, TNT is renegotiating your contracts for higher monies. I'm like, okay. I mean, it could be, it could not be. I mean, at the same time, AEW is doing great ratings, so on and so forth. But maybe there's some assurances that were made. Maybe there's some expectations that exist that we are not privy to. So there's probably extremely complex layers to all of this. They're doing an internal investigation with a third party just to get the stories right, just to get everything right. That's why apparently everyone's suspended, which is common procedure in these types of situations. I much prefer having a clear, confident statement that accompanies a well thought out, well educated decision than hopping on Twitter and saying, we find deplorable the actions of CM Punk or whatever. And then it sets Twitter on fire. Because then that's the thing. Then whatever statement you put out with it, we've all seen this happen. Where an event occurs, no one really thinks about it, and everyone has to react instead of taking the time to think about something. We have to react. Because if we don't do it within the next few minutes, people are going to start atting at us. At AEW. Look, we saw it with the death of Queen Elizabeth. We saw it with the Broadway productions of Les Miserables and Hamilton. Two plays that are created around the idea of imperialistic oppression. And they're both sending their well wishes to the royal family. And I'm like, why did no one think about this? Instead of, oh, we got to get this out. Oh, she's dead. Quick, someone open fucking Canva. Put the logo on. Write up some copy, quick. Les Miserables. A tale as old as time. The poor being poor because they're being fucked over by nobility. And they're going to send well wishes to the Queen of England. What are we even doing? That's why I'm saying this idea of having to react and react and react. Let's take some time to think. Put our heads together. Get all the data. Get all the facts. This happens all the time with the advent of social media. I fucking know. Or PR people feel as if we got to get something out within the next hour or else we're fucked. And then what you end up sending out within an hour is boilerplate. It's platitudes. There's nothing. So then you get shit on because you're putting out the platitudes. The only way we're going to know at this point in time, again, Friday, September 9th, the only moment we're going to know if this is being well handled or not is when we reach a resolution, when we see what happens. And you know what? We probably won't even know for a couple of years still. Everything that went down, all the minute details. This is the type of situation where we're going to get some sort of resolution because AEW has to have a solution in place for this. But we're probably going to only be assured of how good or poorly it was handled in a few years. It's going to be outcomes. It's going to be how the rest of 2022 and 2023 happened for AEW in regards to the decisions they made, and so on and so forth. Anyone who's out there right now pontificating and saying this is what is best is full of shit. On a complete side note, and I talked about it on the podcast, if you were to ask me what would Warren Hayes do, I'm flat out. I fire CM Punk. Get rid of him with the information I know. But I don't have all the information. But based on what we know, hit the bricks, pal. We're good. I think the company will be more than fine without him. And if WWE makes a play for him, let Phil be Paul's problem. Let that locker room deal with Phil. That's all. Let Phil give Miz some advice. You know what I mean? But anyone who says the best decision for the company, like with assurance, and was like, this is what Tony has to do, is full of shit. You can have an opinion, you can be like, what I do is this, but I don't know. I don't have all the information. None of us do. CM Punk should be fired because he threw the first punch. Who cares? Who cares who threw the first punch? There is so much more than throwing a first punch here. What happened this weekend didn't happen just because of a one-off event. This is clearly the culmination of something that was long-lasting, fermenting, festering even. I'd even go more festering than fermenting, because at least when you ferment stuff, usually you can get something pretty good. You get a nice ale. You can get kimchi. Fermenting is much better than festering. Let's go with festering. This is a situation that came to a head because of months, probably, of bullshit backstage. And I was going to say for some reason, but I think, knowing his history, there's no real surprise here. It's been festering for months, and it seems to all be centered around CM Punk. So what are you going to do? You got to do something about it. And frankly, I don't care where anyone ends up. I don't care where anyone ends up. If Omega goes back to New Japan or does finally sign with WWE, this is all going to be exciting shit. What's going to be interesting to see is how pivotal a moment this Dynamite was, this event was, how pivotal a moment it will be for the history of AEW. I would be inclined to say that this is a milestone moment for the company. This is one that you can put your finger on and say, on this day, kind of like, the Bret Hart Stone Cold last man standing match, right? The I Quit match, right? Kind of like one of those, a stamp in time that becomes crucial for the future of the company. This is one right here. Enough monologuing. Let's talk about the show. So we've talked about Tony doing his spiel and whatnot, and it's fine. I've talked about it, the implications, so on and so forth. But I do want to talk right now about the Tournament of Champions because that was announced there. They showed the brackets almost immediately. Hangman Page, Bryan Danielson to open up the brackets. Then on Friday on the Rampage, Sammy Guevara, Darby Allin. Those are the opening brackets. And then the qualifiers, maybe even to a degree, because then we move on to the semifinals, where Jon Moxley and Chris Jericho are currently got a bye, essentially. They had a bye in this, and they are on the next bracket, and I love this. And then the winners from those semifinals go to the finals at Grand Slam on September 21st to crown the new, not interim, the new AEW World Champion. Now, a lot of people have brain worms. They don't pay attention. They snivel in, whatever liquid of choice that they're consuming at that time. But this was not hard to understand why these people were chosen. They even wrote on the graphic for the tournament the reasons why these people were picked for this tournament. Because they are all former champions. It is the Grand Slam Tournament of Champions, not of number one contenders, not of people getting a push, not current belt holders. Tournament of Champions. Hangman Page, former AEW World Champion and Tag Team Champion. Bryan Danielson, former 6-time World Champion. Sammy Guevara, 3-time TNT Champion. Darby Allin, longest reigning TNT Champion. Chris Jericho, 7-time World Champion. Jon Moxley, 3-time World Champion. What more exposition do you fucking need? This all makes sense. And on top of that, these are all great wrestlers. What in the fucking hell is anyone bitching about? I don't understand. At the time that this was put on our television, 2 days previous, the guy's EVPs and his fucking world champion were throwing hands. Chairs were flying around. Bites were exchanged. He calls up Jon Moxley, who was supposed to be on vacation. And he says, John, the company needs you. What the fuck does Jon Moxley do? He says, fine, man, put me in. Put me in, coach. Chris Jericho was supposed to have a slower schedule. So was Danielson. They all got brought in. Why? Because they're coming up as leaders. They're coming up as the pros. This is what you do in a time of crisis. And from this point on, I look at these three guys And I sincerely believe that all three of them want AEW to succeed. I sincerely believe from the reaction of all those three guys that they do have the company's best interests at heart, that they understand what the value of AEW is. They're team players, they're leaders. I cannot fucking believe people losing their shit. Another tournament. What about the number one contenders? Who the fuck cares? Getting a goddamn tournament that actually calls into the history meta AEW, the meta of wrestling. Chris Jericho didn't win 7 championships in AEW. Neither did John. Jesus Christ. I don't know what people want. I don't know what people want out of the wrestling. Because when the wrestling starts becoming too much like wrestling, they get mad. I don't know. I don't understand. I don't understand. I saw this and I was like, this fucking rocks. I go onto Twitter, I see a bunch of bozos. I see other people, like myself, looking this over and go, wow, what a strange series of decisions. Why didn't they include Miro? I'm like, Jesus Christ. After they introduced the graphic for the tournament, MJF hits the ring. And he's wearing a Buffalo Bills jersey, and everyone is going nuts for him, as they should. Now, this was expertly planned out. Expertly planned out. You had MJF come to the ring, and Tony Khan knows far too well that regardless of what he's going to do with MJF this evening, the minute he comes out, the audience is going to smother him with love. Because everyone is going to be excited to have MJF back, to have someone that came up in AEW. Not saying, but came into consciousness, into the mainstream in AEW. Someone that they can latch onto and go, there's our guy. There's our guy. And that's exactly, and you know what? That's exactly what happens. And MJF leans into it. This is how it was planned. Coming out with the local sports jersey. Says the last time he was there, maybe he said some offensive stuff, but he thinks we can all agree that he didn't mean it and he was just kidding. Says he loves AEW. He'll never leave this place. Talks about the world title and the tournament. But he says, I work smart, not hard. So he's not doing the tournament because he has a chip that guarantees him a shot. And it's not heelish. It just makes sense, right? It's not a heel thing. More baby faces should have that type of thing. Instead of being like, I'm going to enter the tournament and improve myself. You're a fucking moron is what you are. You know. And he also points out that Tony Khan is paying me a boatload of freaking money. And then he says, if we're in dark times, we're not, and he can't think of anyone more trustworthy to lead his people through the promised land than someone whose name starts with an M and split the Red Sea and so on and so forth. And he's not saying he's Moses. He says he's better than Moses. And I thought that was fantastic. And then Jon Moxley's music hits. Moxley gets into the ring and tells MJF, you're absolutely full of shit. Which MJF is, of course. And he starts shitting on Buffalo, takes off the jersey, rubs his anus on it, and just goes off, right? And he says, he doesn't care about AEW or the people that are here. And he just sees the world title as a bargaining chip that he can use for the bidding war of 2024. He drops Cody Rhodes' name, Triple H's name, Nick Khan, what did he say? Called him only the best Khan in wrestling. Jolly old Saint Nick Khan. I thought that was funny. Mox says now ain't the time. And he says, if you don't get the fuck out of the ring, I'm going to kick your ass. And MJF does the heel thing where he gets undressed and he pretends he wants to fight and he struggles with his shirt. And in the most glorious, I'm so glad that happened to him when he was in full heel mode because it's really karmatic. It's like, oh yeah, you little shit, you want to get on, and he's tugging at the cuff. He can't get it off and he's tugging at it and it's just absurdly great stuff. So he hits the bricks, of course. He takes to the showers. Moxley continues, though. He's on his promo, and he delivers the promo that this show absolutely needed. Passionate, real, sincere, authentic. Everything that makes Jon Moxley was transferred here. He says he's embarrassed about losing the title. He says the title represents passion for this sport, for this business. And he says it right here, for the vision that they had, AEW, to show the world that what wrestling could be, to take the dark and ugly side of the business and let it die with another generation. So he's taking another chance, to take the shot when the game's on the line, and he puts over Chris Jericho, puts over Bryan Danielson, Darby Allin, Hangman Page, Sammy Guevara, all younger and faster than him is what he said. But winners always want the ball when the game is on the line, and he wants the ball. This isn't just winning time right now. This is time to be a legend. Absolutely killer promo. I am not even doing it proper service here. But this is exactly what this show needed. As fans who have been following the drama, this is what we needed to see and hear. And I am convinced this is a promo that a lot of people backstage needed to hear as well. Jon Moxley stepping up. Jon Moxley, and I've been preaching this for the better part of the year at this point, is pro wrestling. He embodies everything that is awesome about pro wrestling. This is a guy who is employed by a national American promotion, and he goes off into the indies and works in front of 400 people, 200, 300 people, just because he loves it, because he wants to feel that energy, because he wants to beat people up. He flies to Japan to do it there, because he wants to wrestle completely different people, an entirely different style. A guy who is free as a bird to wrestle, to be pro wrestling. I have nothing but respect for Jon Moxley. And you know what? Then delivering, going into these matches and doing it and being compelling and passionate about it. There is no one who is selling me more on the good that pro wrestling is than Jon Moxley right now. And what this promo did here, and I know a lot, look, I'm not creating any hot takes. Everyone is raving about the promo with reason. This was tremendous. In a business of fakes. And I was just talking about it on the members only podcast that I did, where I was talking about Worlds Collide, and I was talking about Brooks and Johnson, the NXT team, Briggs and Jensen. You know who I'm talking about. The two fake tough guys, right? Those are two guys who you're supposed to buy as being tough guys because they do vignettes, right? So if they're in a bar beating people up, well, they're clearly tough guys, right, guys? They're tough guys because we showed you video of them beating guys up. So they're tough guys. They put on, sleeveless flannel shirts. That's what tough guys do. Guys who are looking for a fight. And so they're tough guys. So you have the phonies, you have the cosplayers, and then you have the people who are sincere in what they do. That's real. Like what Jon Moxley says when he talks. And you get the same vibe from Bryan Danielson. Not the same level of promo skill, for being honest with each other. That's not what I'm talking about, but I'm talking about the authenticity, the real that comes out of it. Letting wrestlers be pro wrestlers instead of having wrestlers be characters. This is why AEW feels so natural to me, and I feel so logically connected with it, because it is seldom that things feel forced, that things feel artificial. And Jon Moxley coming out, the realest guy in the room, to borrow a phrase, comes out, cuts. It's not even a rah-rah promo. It's not even one of those. It's a booster. It's a morale booster. It's a, look, we went through the shit, let's fucking go. But I will argue that it is not only Jon Moxley that was outstanding here. MJF was incredible. And for everyone who's saying Jon Moxley is putting that company on his back, I will counter argue. Jon Moxley and MJF are putting that company on their back right now. Because what MJF did was not only masterful, but he set the groundwork for this. And if he's not prepared to pull his own weight, Tony Khan would not have put him on first thing out the gate after announcing that all the titles have been stripped. Well, not all. MJF is taking the company on his back as well. He and Jon Moxley right now are the guys who are going to propel AEW forward into the next week, the next 2 weeks, the next months. We don't know how long this is going to take, but they are going to be the shining examples. This is what you do. And I'm stoked for it. And you can do whatever comparisons you want with MJF having done the same thing, with Wardlow, and it didn't hurt Wardlow. It didn't end up hurting Wardlow any single bit. I think this is fantastic. Let's move on. So out the gate, we get the AEW World Trios match where Death Triangle defeated the Best Friends to become the new AEW Trios champions, which is fantastic in a really fun hot opener. I thought it was a lot of fun. Pac becomes the first AEW wrestler to be a double champion, being the All Atlantic champion and the Trios champion. And I think it makes sense. They had been setting up a match with they set up a feud, at the very least a match with Orange Cassidy at All Out. So there might be something there. So maybe Pac won't be All Atlantic champion for long. Maybe they're going to stick with that plan. We'll see how things go forward. Would have been nice, I think. You know what? Either team here would have done it for me. But I think there's a lot to say about Death Triangle being the Trios champions, going forward with this, and being credible top-tier champions. Look, the plan was clearly to put it on the Elite so that the titles would feel prestigious out the gate. The Elite are in whatever situation they're in right now, so they can't hold the titles. Who is a next competent trios, credible, that can wrestle, that can go, that can get these titles over? Death Triangle. Makes a lot of sense. could have, yes, I think it would have made a lot of sense to throw, what's her face, the Dark Order in there. But because they were in the finals, right? But Reynolds is hurt. Fun match, great opener. Great opening promo. That business that had to be settled. I have no problem with that. And then a hot match to kick things off. Then we get the Dark Order interviewed backstage, and Jose, the assistant, has a contract for Preston Vance, and Evil Uno and John Silver are telling him to hit the showers, but Andrade and Rush are there, and everyone's mad at each other. There's a lot of testosterone, and they want to speak to Preston personally. I think that they're edging towards Preston Vance leaving the Dark Order here. We get a recap of the interim women's title match, including a little juicy bit between Britt Baker and Jamie Hayter, as Britt tries to apologize to Jamie Hayter for pulling the referee away from the ring when Hayter had a clear, well, maybe not a clear 3 count, but was definitely very, very close. Hayter didn't want to hear it. We got Toni Storm defeating Penelope Ford in Toni Storm's first defense of the interim world women's title. I thought this was pretty good. The folks on Cage Match, I think they rated it pretty low, but I thought this was actually quite good. I think this was actually a very good showcase of Penelope Ford, who again came out, and I feel there's been a lot of that since Thunder Rosa's injury. But there's been a lot of women going out there feeling like they have something to prove. And I think Penelope Ford was part of had that on the mind and was just ready to go. I thought it was great. Not great. I thought it was a good match. It was a fun match. I thought the women worked. They worked. The work was very snappy, very, very snug. I enjoyed it. With all this stuff that we've been talking about in regards to, the scrum and CM Punk, of course, I mean, it's hard not to. It's a little strange, the discourse that's been going around Thunder Rosa recently, if you ask me. And it was a little compounded at the scrum when Toni Storm, when she was asked about when she was asked about Thunder Rosa's back injury. She said that, I'll read the quote here. I picked off of Figure 4 Online. Quote, "I mean, it's not ideal, but Thunder Rosa says she's injured. Okay, so when she says she's not injured, she can come back and lose to me, and that will be the end of that." She says she's injured. So when she says she's no longer injured, it's an interesting turn of phrase that Toni used here. Interesting choice of words. When Thunder Rosa says she's no longer injured, she can come back and fight me. Implying, maybe implying that she doesn't quite buy the injury angle. And this is the whole thing at this point, right? This is the new tinfoil conspiracy that Thunder Rosa is not legitimately injured. Because now, what was I reading? Was Conan on Busted Open or something, or on his podcast? I mean, it's Conan. But he was saying that he was talking to Thunder Rosa, and she said, "My legs, I have problems with my legs." And he says, "Well, why are you telling me you have problems with your legs if your back was allegedly injured?" But I mean, it's Conan. This is circulating now. I just think this is a very, of course it gets lost into the bigger narrative of stuff, but it's still I find, and it could be just Tony Storm sort of kayfabe in this, being a champion, oh yeah, this challenger says she's injured. Well, when she says, it could be just a promo. She could be just cutting a promo as opposed to peeling behind the curtain a little bit, peeling some rind off of the orange. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's that, but it's still an interesting wrinkle here in this Thunder Rosa story that we keep hearing about. I don't see many people being pissed off at the idea of Thunder Rosa being gone for a while. Where were we? Oh yeah, we get packages, video packages between 2.0 and Hook and Action Bronson. And they're cutting promos on each other. And this all leads to a match at Arthur Ashe 2.0 versus Hook and Action Bronson. What? Look, it's like I said when I reviewed All Out, and I'm going to leave it as such for now. But I always have, I'm apprehensive, always apprehensive at the idea of celebrities coming in to beat up professional fighters. And I get it, it's wrestling. And look, please, oh God, please don't send me messages or leave comments explaining why they're doing it. I understand why they're doing it. It's like I said on the podcast. I understand why my doctor has to do what he does when I get a colonoscopy, but that doesn't mean I like it. I understand, but I don't like it. Kind of like the same thing here. I understand why they do matches like this and put wrestlers, put stars in the position where they can wrestle. I understand why they do it. I don't have to like it. I get it. We'll see how this goes, but I don't know what they're still hiding. Hook. What are they hiding? This is a mystery to me. Why isn't Hook on a full-blown singles run at this point? Why do I feel like we're still smoke and mirroring them, which was smart for a while, because for all intents and purposes, he's got it, he gets it. In the meantime, WWE just tosses Dominic in there to the win, and he stinks. So what are we doing here? Hook has all the naturals. Hook has everything that Dominic wishes he had. And I'm not just talking skill. I'm talking presence. I'm talking how to handle yourself in a ring, how to present yourself, make you look like a big deal. I don't know why we're smoke and mirroring Hook still. There's something I'm not quite getting. The Acclaimed come out to a raucous reaction from the crowd. They're all excited. Everyone's excited for Max Caster's promo, his rap. He was teasing it on Twitter as well. But no, he gets cut off by Shane Strickland, aka Swerve, who comes out and basically says, you wanted little jokes? I got a joke. The Acclaimed as AEW Tag Champions. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, this is fantastic heat. For all the bullshit that I that I called out on my review in regards to how the Acclaimed versus Swerve in Our Glory was handled at All Out, clearly Tony's like, yeah, you know what? Maybe I fucked up. He did. He absolutely did. So we're having the rematch at Arthur Ashe, at All Ash. There we go. Only people named Ash can go in, or cosplaying as Ash. Which Ash? Ash Ketchum. You could come in as Ash from the Evil Dead series. I'm sure there are other Ashes out there. Those are the two that come to mind right now. And I think I'm going to close the bit on that. But we're still getting that match regardless of who you cosplay as. And what's fantastic is, again, I think Tony sort of went, oh, you know what, man, we should have pulled the trigger on it. Billy Gunn cuts him off. Billy Gunn, there's no way in hell he's going back to WWE. He's still over. You do the scissor me daddy ass thing, the stuff that I can't stand. But here's the thing. This is how much. Look, this is how much of a pro your boy Warren Hayes here is. This is how much of a pro I am. I will not say enough how much the whole Acclaimed thing ain't for me. I've seen it before. It does nothing for me. Can't tell you enough how much I hated the whole Acclaimed Gun Club bullshit over the past few months. Didn't care for it at all. But I'm not a dummy. Saw it getting over. The Acclaimed got over with it. So all the more power to them. Let's fucking go. If these guys got themselves over the way they did by doing fucking bullshit like this, that's fine. I'm fine with it. Let's go. And I'll continue being consistent here. Anthony Bowen's rules. And I've been saying this since the start of the Acclaimed. Anthony Bowen's rules. Finally, people are coming around and they're seeing what I've seen months ago. Plus, he's a fantastic human. Jericho Appreciation Society backstage cutting a promo. Jericho is going off on his win against Danielson. Do you want my full thoughts on that match? Well, you can listen to my podcast where I recapped it. Spoiler alert, I didn't care for it. So basically, yeah, Jericho talking about his match against Danielson, and then the tournament, and Sammy's hyping his match against Darby, and then they talk about Garcia going at it alone. It's fine. Then we get our first, before that, AEW TNT title match where Wardlow crushed Tony Nese. And Wardlow gets on the mic, cuts a promo to cut down all the naysayers, saying, well, the nerds are out there. Not the nerds. This is my interpretation. But he's saying all the nerds out there saying that I don't have I don't have it anymore. I've lost it. He hasn't lost it. You know, the overthinkers on the internet will lead you to believe that Wardlow is no longer over. And yet I challenge them to listen to the reactions that he gets every single week. This guy is over. Fuck you, thank you, bye. To quote. Darby cuts a promo on Sammy Guevara and then starts a fucking fantastic hour of professional wrestling. And you get the extraordinary promos to start with, where Jon Moxley is giving us the shot in the arm, saying, guys, everything's going to be all right because Daddy Mox is here and my buddy MJF, we're going to push through this and we're going to do it together kind of thing. And then later on in the evening, you go, you know what? AEW is fine. It's going to be fine because we got an hour of extraordinary pro wrestling. Once again, delivered to us on a Wednesday night. World title tournament, quarterfinal match. Bryan Danielson defeated Hangman Adam Page. Their third match together. Adam Page and Bryan Danielson, it has been decided by me, they cannot have a bad match against each other. These guys fucking rule. This was great. Not good, not fun. Great. We know Adam Page is a hell of a worker. We know this. Bryan Danielson, the greatest North American wrestler to ever lace his boots. You put them together. Third match that they have. Third barn burner. Absolutely extraordinary match. Everything hit here. Everything hit. This whole match. And what about the finish? Goes for the buckshot lariat. And does our boy Hangman go? Danielson ducks. Gets into a corner roll. Bridges gets the fucking win. And it's not even like there's still room to grow in this. If Tony Khan wants to play this right, if he's been observing, which I'm sure he has been, I think at this point he has to see that Danielson and Page is something special. And that he's got himself and, a go-to feud with these two guys that will deliver every time. He may have on his hands an Okada Tanahashi type of situation where two of the greats, you just pull them out at any time and people get excited and they deliver in the ring every time. Danielson advances, so he's facing Chris Jericho. I can only hope that the match with Jericho next week on Dynamite will be better than what happened at All Out. That's all I can ask for. Then Stokely Hathaway comes out, and he's there with his crew. The Guns, Ethan Page, Lee Moriarty, and W. Morrissey. And he cuts a promo about, being, what did he say? That he's the greatest ladder match champion or something. Anyway, then he has a crew member, an AEW crew member, come up to do one of these, like, wrap it up, But it's not really a crew member. It's Young Jay Lee, who is an independent wrestler out of where? Buffalo, New York, whom I've seen a few times over at C4 Wrestling in Ottawa. Fantastic pro wrestler. And he's friends with all the Buffalo boys. He's friends with Blackwood and Puff and Dan Garcia. So he gets in on this. So he gets beat up. Good little segment. Stokely demands the respect. He demands respect. That's right. They beat him down. That's what okay. We get a promo for Claudio Castagnoli versus Dax Harwood this Friday on Rampage. By God, man. The Dax Harwood singles run of 2022 barges on. I'm excited for this. Should be a lot of fun. And then finally, to cap off the evening, Ring of Honor Pure title, Dan Garcia defeated Wheeler Yuta in a Pure Rules situation where Wheeler got a little dirty at some points, right? He threw a straight punch and removed the protector around the ring hook, that holds the turnbuckles in place. That's not very pure of you, Wheeler. What are you doing? But I like this match a lot. Thought it was a very good match. A lot of great energy from the crowd, of course. And guess what? The right man won. Gee Willikers, Bobby. Can you believe that? The right man won. It's as if, going into a hometown and building up the hometown lad and having him win in front of his hometown crowd is actually good for business. Holy shit. Wild. This is the thing. See, I don't want to get into it. I talked about it on the podcast. But I think it is a good moment to pull the trigger on Daniel Garcia. This whole thing with the Jericho Appreciation Society is not quite resolved clearly because Jericho had told him at All Out, you're going out there alone. You're not going to get our help. He went out there alone. He won without the help. But then before Jericho could come out to celebrate with Garcia, Danielson was out shaking his hand. I'm like, oh. You know, at some point I'm just thinking, maybe Danielson really doesn't care and he just wants to fuck with Jericho, which is entirely possible. You know what I mean? I know everyone wants Dan Garcia in the Blackpool Combat Club, but you know what William Regal said rings true though. On commentary, he said, look, of course, you know, we'd love to have him in, but we also need to have, you know, good competition. We can't have all the top guys on our side. Otherwise, we're just going to get soft, is what he was saying. Iron forges iron. Iron strengthens iron. Iron does something to iron to make it stronger. So, you know, not entirely false there. It made sense to me. Fantastic finish. And honestly, again, just from the second hour on, we were just treated to wonderful, beautiful pro wrestling, top to bottom. And this is why, again, we're spoiled. And then on top of that, we had the trios match to kick things off. We're spoiled. And it's okay to be spoiled. And you know what? That's the thing when we get into a situation like All Out, where the matches, I feel, are under-delivering as to what we see sometimes on Wednesdays. I'm like, what am I even doing here paying $60 for this? Because look at what I've got every Wednesday night for free. And look, we're likely going to get Danielson versus Mox at Arthur Ashe. That's my prediction. That's my prediction for the tournament. I think Darby moves forward. So we get Mox versus Darby. We get Danielson versus Jericho. Mox and Danielson advance. That's what I think we're having at Arthur Ashe. And we're going to get that on television. We're going to get that. We won't have to cough up any more cash. Probably going to talk about it more next week on the podcast when we start hearing more about the all-out buys and so on and so forth. I'll have a chance to think about it a little and provide some analysis. But the TV's important. And as much as we like to sit around and talk about pay-per-view buys and so on and so forth, the name of the game in the year of our Lord 2022 is licensing. It's TV rights fees. That's where we're at. So the TV is important. But it's a discussion for the prodcast, where we prod everyone. The podcast proper is what I was trying to say. This was the AEW Dynamite review. Thank you, everyone, for joining me, for listening, for tuning in. I appreciate it a great deal. If you haven't already, leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on your podcast applications, all that stuff. Leave some comments here on YouTube. It'd be my pleasure to chat with you. In the meantime, I will probably see you. We'll see you on Thursday for the next MrWarrenHayes show. So you don't want to miss that. Look, whatever time, there might be things that happen in the meantime. Regardless, I'll see you next time.